It's an absolute pleasure meeting you again since EBC 2022 in Barcelona. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
How long were you in London?
I've been here, well, I've lived here now for almost 6 years, since just before the pandemic, actually.
And how are you liking London?
Oh, I really like it. I mean, the traffic is dreadful, but otherwise, no, the city is really nice.
How was Germany?
Germany was good. Germany was good. Well, I mean, I had a chance to speak at this Next Block Expo, and it was really interesting because I don't spend enough time in Germany. This was in Berlin, and they have a very active community there, as we were just chatting about earlier. You know, obviously Ethereum was invented in Berlin, so they've got an active blockchain community. And actually the organizers of this event come from Poland. And so there were actually a huge amount of companies from Central Europe attending as well. So it wasn't just German community members, it was people from Poland and Hungary and Romania and other places. So it was really interesting to connect with all those kind of community members too, because we don't spend enough time there, and there are so many great pockets of enthusiastic builders everywhere.
Among all your variable activities,
yes.
The A-Fest in Hong Kong caught my eye. How did you get to collaborate with Yuga Labs?
So we've been, friends with them for a very long time. We're actually investors in Yuga Labs, and we worked with them on the launch of the ApeCoin a couple of years ago. So we've collaborated with them quite closely. And one of the things in discussion with them is they were thinking about planning the next Ape Fest, which historically has always occurred alongside NFT NYC in New York. We suggested to them, hey, this would actually be really cool if you think about doing Ape Fest outside of the US to engage with some of the international Yuga community. And so of course we suggested Hong Kong because that's our home, and we thought that it was a great kind of hub for all the fans and community members around Asia to come to Hong Kong. It's quite convenient, etc.
Oh, for sure. You created Rec League game.
Yes.
And I think that's a very creative. How did you come up with that?
So Rec League, actually, it's funny, Rec League came out, I guess, in August this year. And when it came out, people said to me, they're like, oh my God, you announced this game ages ago. What happened? And I said, well, actually, it launched slightly ahead of schedule. We announced the game in November of 2021, but it takes 2 years to make a decent game. And people forget that making games takes quite a while. So the idea behind Rec League was, it was actually the first game or product to be announced that uses the IP from the Yuga ecosystem. And so what we wanted to do was create an action fighting game, because that's what our studio that created it is best at. So it's a PvP fighting game, and it imagines a world of mech robots where inside the robots are bored apes, using the robots, steering the robots, controlling them, I should say. And we wanted to use this lore of the other side metaverse that Yuga has created and use all of that sort of content ecosystem, but at the same time recognize that we want to make a pure standalone Web3 game, meaning anybody with any PFP from the Bored Ape ecosystem or outside can bring it into the game and use it in that game. And we think that's really exciting because interoperability is a real key to how you engage Web3 communities. But at its core, you get VIP treatment if you're a PFP holder from one of the Yuga collections. So you get special treatment in that case.
Oh, that's exciting. Do you play the game yourself?
I've tried, but I'm terrible at it. So to be honest, because it's actually a very good game, which means that the skill level needed is quite high. So unless you're a real hardcore gamer, you don't last very long. You just get beaten up by other players.
What does ApeCoin do, and what kind of activities are happening?
So the ApeCoin DAO is really about, it's a DAO, so a decentralized autonomous organization that basically is the governance body for how the ApeCoin Foundation uses ApeCoin. And so the ApeCoin Foundation holds a treasury of ApeCoin, and the DAO manages proposals from external third-party organizations who want to work with that ecosystem. So they give grants to other parties. So you can apply to the ApeCoin DAO if you want to make a project that will use ApeCoin, for example. And the DAO will then vote on this. and whether or not you can participate in the DAO and vote basically just depends on how much ApeCoin you hold. So it's a democratic system. And the thing about the ApeCoin DAO that's so interesting is that actually it's obviously not the only DAO out there, but it has a pretty generous treasury because ApeCoin is worth quite a lot. So they have a lot of resources and they're very active. The community members are very active and they do snapshot voting on almost a weekly basis on different proposals. So they're very engaged and it's great because you can actually see, you know, a couple years on how an organization like that, which is, you know, cobbled together of individuals across the internet, can really form a cohesive organization and govern and work together on something, which is really cool.
You've mentioned in your speech that NFT and Web3 concept in Simpsons show was very interesting.
Yes.
And what other shows in the future do you expect these concepts to be seen?
So I mentioned The Simpsons because actually it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Everybody loves The Simpsons, but I think also The Simpsons, one of the specialties of that particular show is that they really have their feel on the pulse of society and culture. So I think that it's a great barometer of where society is, and they tend to be a little bit ahead of the curve. So typically if you see something on The Simpsons, it then continues to become more popular afterwards because they're usually first. And it's very strange because it's a, you know, satirical cartoon, but they're really good at this. So I think the fact that we recently had an episode of The Simpsons about NFTs is a great sign for, you know, reflecting perceived public interest in NFTs and what's going on in Web3. I think you're going to start to see this a lot more in popular culture when it comes to things on television, etc. You already see it all across, you know, the internet and social media. I mean, frankly, crypto Twitter is the most engaged and active part of Twitter, and I know that for a fact from, you know, a friend who works at Twitter.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Web3 part of Twitter is by far the most engaged community.
I see you're wearing the Mocaverse t-shirt.
Yes.
For someone new entering the space, how do I become like an active member?
Sure. So Mocaverse is one of our in-house projects. It started with the Mocaverse NFT collection, and so those obviously we distributed to all the people in our Animoca ecosystem, including our shareholders, our portfolio companies, our staff, people that we work with. So basically our Animoca community, anybody who touches our community. But all of them are also, they're available on OpenSea, because obviously some people, you know, traded them or didn't want them or something like that. So they're available, and so you could go to OpenSea, for example, and buy a Mocaverse NFT if you like. Once you're part of the community, then that gives you access to lots of different things. One is the Mocha ID system, which we're implementing as kind of a Web3 ID system across all kinds of different applications, initially games, but it'll extend beyond games. And we also have introduced quests and gamification layers to encourage the community to participate in events together. So probably the best known one at the moment is a game called Pixels, which is one of the more popular Web3 games on the market at the moment. And we have a collaboration with Pixels where you can bring your Mocha into Pixels. It appears as a pixelated, like it appears in the art style of Pixels, and you can bring and play with your other Mocaverse community members and other people inside the game.
How many Mocaverse do you have?
So the NFTs, originally we did like the typical size collection. So this was, I think, 8,000, as you'll appreciate being Asian, 8,888 Mocaverse NFTs. So the IDs, actually we've now minted about 100,000 IDs. So we're quite pleased with that milestone because it's quite early on, you know, since we launched the Mocaverse ID.
Holders, do you think you'll do like offline events?
Yes. So we've only done one so far. So we did actually a Mocaverse cruise during the Ape Fest in Hong Kong.
Oh,
so we collaborated and got together with the Ape Fest community and the Mocaverse community and did a joint event where everybody went on a VIP cruise together.
Oh my gosh, I missed all that fun! There's a question that a lot of people are talking about. What do you expect if SEC approves the spot ETF?
The SEC is going to approve the Bitcoin ETFs. Yes, I'm quite sure of that. It seems to be that the trend is in the right direction. I think that what we're going to see is I mean, frankly, I think it will mean that the price of Bitcoin, you know, let's just say it goes up. I'm not going to comment on how much, but it's going to have a strong price impact in my mind. I think the most interesting thing I learned recently is that the expectation from the traditional financial services industry is that Bitcoin ETF fee income is estimated to be between $10 and $12 billion a year. And that's just for the fund managers who are managing those Bitcoin ETFs. So I think that gives you some idea of the scale of the transaction volume and the assets under management that are going to be expected. You know, because obviously if that's a 5% fee income, then you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of new assets being invested into Bitcoin, and that will have a dramatic price impact on Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, that would be a huge
yes, and I think by extension that then has a kind of a waterfall effect on the rest of the Web3 industry, because even though, as I mentioned this actually in a panel the other day, I said we have 500 portfolio companies, we have lots of studios making games, and as far as I can recall, I only have 2 companies that are working with Bitcoin. We're basically an EVM business. We don't really touch Bitcoin. But Bitcoin for Web3 is kind of like interest rates or employment figures or other macroeconomic indicators. Even though we don't work directly with it, the fact that the price of Bitcoin goes up does have a knock-on effect on the entirety of the Web3 industry. So I think to have that kind of tailwind at the back of everything else that we do in the more Ethereum-related world, I think will be great.
So do you own Bitcoin yourself?
I have a little, yeah, a little. I wish I had more. I think everybody wishes they had more, right?
What do you see as the main trend for blockchain application in 2024?
The main trend. So I think the main trend is going to, there's a couple of things. We will continue to see more launches of much more sophisticated Web3 enabled products. So if you look at the game industry, where we spend a lot of time, the second half of this year, we've seen a lot of really great games coming out that are of a quality level that people are quite familiar with from Web 2. And that's because a lot of funding went into the market for Web3 games in 2021 and 2022, and making those games takes a couple of years, so now we're starting to see those games come out. So we'll continue to see that trend of great new games coming out, I think, all the way through next year. I think the second thing is interoperability. So Web3 has the potential for tremendous interoperability of things like playable NFTs in between games, but we frankly don't do enough of it. So like the Pixels example I mentioned earlier, where you can use your MocaVerse NFT inside Pixels, you can't actually do that in very many games. It's, we did that in Sandbox with lots of PFP collections in the last season of the Sandbox, but most Web3 games have ownable assets that you can trade, but really they just exist inside their game, and you can't really use them in other games yet. That's something that I think we will see more of in 2024. It will still continue moving slowly because it's very difficult to implement. And that's one of the reasons actually that we co-founded the Open Metaverse Alliance, because creating these interoperability standards is actually quite tricky. But I think it's a big trend to watch, because the more interoperability we can provide between applications, the more we can demonstrate the benefits of the network effects of Web3.
Oh wow, that's huge. What country do you think this mostly will be happening in?
Good question. Web3 is very much everywhere. I think the thing about Web3 that really excites me is that every time I go somewhere, somewhere new, I find really active, excited Web3 communities that I didn't know existed. Like, as I said, I was just in Berlin, and I had no idea that the Polish Web3 ecosystem or the Romanian Web3 ecosystem was so big, because I just hadn't met those people before. But it's fabulous. My colleagues were in Turkey a few weeks ago at DevCon and at the Binance event, and I knew Turkey was huge for gaming, but boy, the Web3 ecosystem is really, really thriving there. So I think it's hard to pin down where these innovations come from, because the beauty of Web3 is that they can come from anywhere. That having been said, I think the one exception to that rule is I do think that things are going to continue for the moment being a bit slower in the US. So I think more of the innovation is going to come from outside the US than inside, because I think that the actions of the Securities and Exchange Commission over the last year have had kind of a chilling effect on innovation in the US, in Web3.
That is good and bad, living in Europe, I guess.
Yes.
You are an investor for Web3 gaming, so
yes.
How do you select the next game to invest in?
It's not easy. I mean, I think it's just like investing in games generally. So it's about trying to first, obviously, you know, the team and the experience of the team and their ability to deliver products on budget and on schedule. It's hard enough just to deliver something on budget and on time, right? Much less to have it be a hit. So you look at the team, and then also we think about things like content genre. You know, how competitive is the content genre? Are they able to deliver a really compelling product in that kind of content? Is there a demand in Web3 communities for that kind of content? Is it, you know, a fighting game or a strategy game or a card game? And for me, I always ask them, what is their plan for interoperability? Because I think that that future-proofs your product, because it's one thing to bring in users, but I think in Web3, the superpower that we can take advantage of is interoperability. So if we offer utility for other NFTs to come into our games, then we can do so, I think, at a lower price than just going out and buying ads and bringing in users by, you know, paying Facebook or whoever to buy ads from them. But in Europe, there are lots of very engaged pockets. Personally, I find Paris to be quite a center, because there are a lot of, I think there's a really nice mix of both more mature Web3 companies, you know, like Ledger or Sorare, or people who've been at it for quite a long time. And there's also a startup community, there's a passionate Ethereum builders community, but there's also a great local education system that produces technical graduates that can fuel the growth of these companies. So I think they have a good mix there in Paris. And so if you go to any of those big events in Paris, like Paris Blockchain Week and ECC and stuff, you'll see that there's a lot of activity going on, which is great.
Oh yes, I did visit Sandbox headquarters in Paris.
Yes. Yeah.
I would love to visit again.
Definitely. Well, actually, the fun thing is Sandbox, it's a really cool office space. We actually use it more for events than anything else, because Sandbox, many people don't know, is that actually Paris is not the headquarters of Sandbox.
Oh, sorry.
But people think of it as a French company because Sebastian and Arthur, who founded it, are French. But actually, the majority of the operations are in Argentina, in Buenos Aires.
Oh, Argentina!
Yeah.
I had no idea.
So most of the team building is in Argentina, and in Paris we have some team members who focus on different specialties. You know, because obviously France is a great place to recruit.
Oh, of course. Better start learning French. Where are you heading next? I mean, you're everywhere.
So I'll be in Dubai next week at Global Blockchain Congress. So I'm really looking forward to that, because obviously, you know, Dubai is a big center for Web3 things. I mean, the last time I was in Dubai a couple months ago, the first thing that struck me was when I got on the train in the airport to go from the gate to the terminal, the guy next to me is wearing a Bored Ape hoodie, which honestly here in London you would never see. But in Dubai, that's not uncommon at all. So Dubai is very much Web3 central.
Thank you so much for being on Bored CEO channel.
No problem.
It was my absolute pleasure having you.
Thank you.